Hi everybody, it's Sarah Cray and I teach watercolor, and today we are doing our Calling Mountains project.
Ooh.
We have Michael here working the cameras.
Well, hi.
And you'll notice that the last few tutorials Keenan has not been in. He's actually been transferred to our sister company, Missouri Start Quilt Company. So we will miss him. He's been great and we're so grateful for all the work he put into this. And change is really hard, but I'm so grateful that I still have the opportunity to teach you and that you guys are still here to learn. And we're going to be doing this project in 5 steps.
Let's do it.
All right, so our very first step is we are going to paint our sky and our mountain. Our second step is we are going to put in our midground, which is kind of these 2 hills. Our third step is we're going to put in our foreground, path, and grassy area. Our fourth step is we will be doing the trees and the details. And then our very last step are the birds, and then like anything else that we think needs attention.
All right.
I have 4 paint brushes that I'm using today. I have my round 2, round 6, round 12, and 1-inch wash. Now the round 2 and a round 6 are our go-to brushes. We literally have hundreds of tutorials using only these 2 brushes, but please know that you can use whatever you have, and please don't stop yourself from creating just because you're not using the same exact supplies that I am. I just like to share what I'm using in case you guys want to know, but you don't have to use this at all. You can use whatever you have. We are using 5 paint colors today. We have black, sepia, azure blue, deep yellow, and fuchsia. They are our Dandelion Paint Company, which is our in-house liquid watercolors. They work well with cellulose paper or wood pulp paper, which is our Let's Make Art paper. This paper is more of a student grade paper. It's definitely more beginner friendly, and it's more budget friendly is what I would say. 100% cotton paper is a dream to paint on with like different paints, but it's really pricey. And sometimes I think that if we're painting on a really expensive sheet of watercolor paper, we get like in our heads too much and get scared. So I love it when we can use supplies that we can throw caution to the wind and just paint, learn and build our technique and our skill. And then whenever we feel ready to jump into more professional grade supplies, we can. And it's just not as scary. Okay?
Sounds good.
All right. So I also used Holbein soft tape to tape down my paper, which is literally my favorite tape for watercolor. I will not use anything else. And I think we can start.
Let's do it.
Let's do our oath. So if you can raise your right hand and repeat after me. I promise to be kind to myself.
I promise to be kind to myself.
I promise not to compare my work.
I promise not to compare my work.
And I promise to have fun.
And I promise to have fun.
Thank you. And I love to start that way because the point of painting is to have fun and to learn. And that's really what we're here for. You know what I mean? Like, this is just for you to, I don't know, take a minute out of your wild, busy day, or maybe not wild and busy, but you just need something for you. This is it. So thank you for being here.
I'm here to learn to be a great painter and supplant the classics. I will be the new Van Gogh.
Yeah?
Yes. I have sinister means.
Oh, I see. Okay, so we're going to start with our sky and our mountains first. So what I'm going to do, and I'm going to tell you this now, is basically I am going to wet the entire sky using just water, and then I'm going to move to my round 12 and put in like swooshes. You can use your wash too. It doesn't really matter. And then we'll put in our mountains. So I'm actually going to mix a gray before I do that because we have black here. And when you add water to black, it makes it gray. Now I'm going for kind of like an overcast, moody mountain feel. If you don't like that feel, if you were to paint this using like a blue sky, it would totally change the feel of this painting. So whatever you want to do. Okay, let's go. So I'm just using my 1-inch wash. And I can overlap the mountains with my water because it's just water. And we might get a little bit of gray that bleeds into there, but that's fine because we'll be painting our mountains that same kind of gray anyway. And then I'm just going to do swoops. And I like doing nice big swoops near the top. And then kind of at the bottom, they can get a little bit closer together. And I'm going to do one more layer with slightly darker gray because when you have a wet surface and you drop color into it, it really diffuses out. And so it might seem really dark as you're putting it in, but I promise you as it dries, it's gonna lighten. And so if you want like that kind of really gray sky, you're gonna want to go a little bit darker than maybe what you would feel comfortable doing. And I always like to have the top part of my sky be like the darkest value of gray, and then if it were to lighten up anywhere, it's near the bottom.
I have thoughts and questions on the color gray, Sarah.
Okay.
This is a throwback to the very early Let's Make Art days, but we filmed an acrylic artist named Aaron, who's hilarious.
He is hilarious.
And he was talking about how there are some art purists who will not use black out of a bottle, and every black they make is a composite black of other colors, right?
Yep.
He said that works in most cases. I'm thinking in this case is one of the rare instances where you want a bottled gray because you don't want any of the undertones of the mixed colors in that gray sky, right?
Well, that's a great question because usually what happens is when you mix black instead of using black out of the tube, there is a vibrancy to it because there's other colors within it, right? And so that's why some people don't like to use black out of the tube because they think it kind of flattens their painting and so forth. In this instance, I would say the benefit of watering down the black to get the gray is these liquid watercolors are extremely vibrant. They're more vibrant than standard sets that you would find at the store. And so because these colors are so vibrant, when you try and mix a neutral and then add water to it, you're always going to get hints of other colors. Now that's not bad. That's not a bad thing, but I would say for if you're beginning and you want just a true gray and you're not as familiar with color theory and trying to neutralize colors, then watering down black is just a sure way to get a neutral gray. However, I do think that there is a benefit to mixing colors because there is a richness. And if you were to say, oh no, this gray is obviously like too blue, that's okay because if you look at different grays in the world, they usually do have undertones of other colors. And if you were to put it next to the different elements on this project, they would still read as gray. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I guess I don't want to stop people from trying it, but it's just easier if you're not as familiar with color theory just to water down the black and use a gray. Okay.
All right.
Great question. Okay, now we're going to start our mountain, and I just want to call attention to one thing, which is in the step-by-step sheet, I mostly just did this main mountain, and then I did this one at the end because it felt flat to me. So I am going to take that learning and actually just do this part alongside this part. So the steps might vary slightly from your printed materials, but please know that's only because I think there's many ways to paint projects, and I want to give you the freedom to explore. So it's not a big deal. Okay, so I'm going to take this same gray. If you want to mix some color in there, you can, but I don't know, I still kind of want it to stay just like a neutral, and then if I want to add color later, I can. So I'm going to take my 12, I'm going to pick up some of this gray, and then on the left-hand side, you see here in my outline, I'm just going to start putting in the shadow.
And this is Mordor, correct?
This is Mordor, yes. And then on this side, I'm kind of doing these rough brush strokes. So you see how it's kind of going to get this texture in here. I really like that texture. And then as I get to the front, I'm going to kind of let my strokes kind of round. And then on this side, I'm going to use just a little bit less of that gray. We still have some shadow, but not as heavily shadowed as this left-hand side. And then while it's still wet on the left-hand side, I'm going to let's grab a tiny bit of blue, maybe some fuchsia. Let's just see what that does. Just for fun. Now it's going to create more of a purple. And maybe that purple's too strong. Let's see what happens if we add some sepia in there. Okay, and some black. Ooh, now I'm getting this really cool, like purple. Do I like that? Let's maybe add some yellow. And for those watching me, this is a lot of my process. How does this feel? What is this color turning into? It's not perfectly planned right before I paint. I mix as I go, and I just see what's in front of me, and then I adjust from there. Okay, so while it's still wet, I can drop in that darker value just here and there. And it's going to kind of diffuse out a little bit. I'm doing smaller strokes because I don't want it to overtake the shadow. Like that. Maybe I'll add a couple. And then I love to dry out my brush. I'm just kind of smear it. So you see how that has a different color than my sky?
Yes.
That one's more purple. I personally am okay with that. I like that. The one in the reference photo is a little bit more green on the left-hand side and then hints of kind of pink on the right. So really allow yourself to have different colors on your mountains. It's just an opportunity for you guys to explore color mixing and to see what it is that you like personally in your own art that you're creating. Okay, so I'm going to do this background mountain, and I'm just going to use a darker value because I kind of want it to fall behind, like almost in shadow. If it gets too dark, you can just use water to kind of like blend and lift some of it out. And then back here, I'm going to use that same kind of color. It's in shadow. And then we got to do this guy. So I'm still using my 12. You can use your 6 because this is a smaller space.
Is this an imaginary mountain or is this based off a real location?
This is an imaginary mountain.
Love it. Mount Sarah.
Mount Sarah. But if there is like a specific mountain that maybe you guys have gone to or you really want to recreate, you can absolutely take these same techniques and put it in there. Okay, so I'm going to mix an even darker value. I'm going to stick mostly to this black. I'm mixing it into my same kind of puddle here, so if I get little hints of other colors, that's to be expected, and I like know this and I'm okay with that. And then I want to make sure that this is dry because I'm going to put in like the darker texture marks. And this is like if a rock or trees were poking out and the snow wasn't there and it's casting a shadow and that kind of stuff. What I really love painting about like snow-capped mountains is it really is like not a lot of work. The white of the paper does so much work for us, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to take this darker color, just kind of start to put it like I'm doing kind of little dashes, keeping them smaller. And then I'm going to dry my brush and rough some of it up. We got to do the same thing on the right hand side, but just a little bit like gentler. So notice that my angles are going this way and on this side they're going this way, and then as I work my way around they kind of forward right here. So I'm using my 6, doing some dry brush. And with this, it's always a good idea to just do like a few strokes and then to leave it and move on to something else and come back to it. It's easy to want to like play with it and mess with it until you're like, oh yeah, mountain. But it's better if you kind of just put a few in there and then like move on. Force yourself to stop. And I'm saying this out loud because I need to hear it. I'm like watching myself and I'm like, okay, that should be good. Okay. And I don't have a lot of detail down here. And the reason why that wash kind of stopped is because I want to give a sense of mistiness a little bit. I wanted it to feel like there's a cloud right there or something, or it's so far away that we can't see that bottom part. If you don't like that feeling of that, you can just continue these textures marks down all the way until your mid-ground. I just see like just how that beautiful just can really make it feel like, oh, there's some texture, there's something going on there, and give it that kind of like realistic look that we might see on a snow cap. Okay.
On Sarah Mountain Jr., do you mean?
Yes. And I'm just gonna do one more right here, right at the top. Okay. Yeah. Now know that as we put in the rest of our painting, we might want to take a second to come back to our mountain and see how it's doing. Whenever you add more values to a painting or build other parts of the painting up, it's going to inform something that you've already put down, especially the values. So I just want to like acknowledge that this might feel really good right now, and it's possible that in a little bit when we come back to it, we're like, oh, that actually needs a little bit more darkness or something like that, you know? Okay. So now I'm going to move on to step 2. I'm going to do my mid-ground. Basically, I'm going to mix together a desaturated green, and I just want to make sure that the values are different from each other. This one on the left-hand side should be a lighter value than the one on the right-hand side. I'm doing the same effect where the top of it is a darker value, and then as it goes down into the space, it lightens up. And again, I'm trying to get that feeling of mist and clouds in between these layers. Okay? So I have my let's use a 12. You can use your round 12 or your 6. I'm going to grab some yellow. I'm going to grab some green. Now, when you mix these yellows and greens together, it's super vibrant, right? Like maybe too vibrant. I want to keep my vibrancy towards more the foreground than the midground. So I'm going to, let's see what happens if we add a little bit of sepia in there. Now, this sepia runs really red and pink, which when you mix it with green, because red and green are complementary colors, when you mix them together, it neutralizes the green and desaturates the green. So now I kind of have this really lovely like olivey color. And let's do one more, like let's prep the other color. So I'm going to do yellow, blue, and instead of sepia, what happens if I add a tiny bit of gray or black? Michael, which color do you like better? This one or this one?
I like the bottom right one.
I do too. So I actually think instead of doing this one and this one, I'm going to just stick to this one and add water to it for the left-hand side. And the reason why I'm doing that is because although these are both desaturated greens, they feel very different color temperature wise, and so I'm nervous to put such a yellow green next to such like a gray green in the middle here. I'm afraid it would create make them very disjointed because the like the hues themselves are so different. So you can have a tiny bit of this. I'm going to add a tiny bit in there, but I'm not going to go full yellow, full kind of gray. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, so now that I have this color in here, I'm going to just go along the top and working quickly, rinse my brush, and just smooth that color out so it's barely there. And I am overlapping this mountain. You see that right here? We want to overlap because we don't want white spaces in between. And then just while it's still wet, I'm just going to go in and kind of like do little pokey outies along the top to make it feel like, hey, this mountain is, or hill is super far away, but there's a grove of trees or there's rocks or something. Like it's not a perfectly smooth hill. Now, whenever you go back in and drop color in along the top, it's going to create these blooms. So if you don't like that look, you can blend it out. If you don't mind the texture and the look, you can leave it. But for me, if it's not doing what I want it to do, I'll just take my brush and blend.
The reset button.
What? Blending?
Yeah, blending it out. Reset.
Yes. Reset. Exactly. Okay. And actually, I need to make sure it goes over that line too. Okay. Now, we dry. And the reason why we want to make sure this layer is dry before we do the next one is because I want to layer on top of it, and I want it to be a sharp line in between to make it very clear. These are two different planes that we're painting. If they blend together, it just kind of, I don't want to say destroys, that's such a negative word, but it kind of removes the illusion that we're trying to create. So I'm going to take that same green that I have here, this like gray green, and I might just do a little bit more just to like make it slightly darker in color. Because the biggest thing is we want to make sure that this value is darker than this one, but not darker than what we're going to paint in the foreground. So we're still looking at like a medium to a medium light. And how you can tell is you can paint right on top. And can you clearly see that? If you can clearly see that it's darker, then your values are good. My painting kind of taped because of the heat tool. And then same thing, blend out. Now I do kind of like that this one here is like really gray. So I'm just gonna take gray. And by gray, I mean I took black and watered it down and introduce that right on top and then blend out. I feel like the desaturated green and the grayness really lends itself to the moodiness, the sky, the snowy mountains, that kind of thing. If you were to go for like a bright sunny summer day and you were to do a blue sky, then I would probably have these hills lean a little bit more warm. Add some yellow in with your green. And of course, let's put in some little things here. So because this little mountain hill thing is closer to us, we will see a little bit more along that line. Not full detail, but it should be more than what we have here. For the most part, when hills or mountainsides or whatever are farther away from us, the line tends to smooth out. When hills or mountains are closer to us, we can make out the sharpness of a rock or the outcropping of trees or things like that. Okay? And I just want to take a second because my sky is dry and I love how my sky turned out. It's just like that soft, overcast gray where it just feels like a cotton blanket is laid over you. You know what I mean? Now, I will say that this has a really strong line, like dark line around on the top of this edge right here. And I just want this corner to transition a little bit smoother into that light wash. So I'm just going to do just a soft little thing right there to kind of have it meet. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. And that's it. Okay, now we're going to move on to step 3, which we're going to do our path and our foreground grass. So we've been talking about values and how having a lighter value will push something away and that kind of stuff. Now, what's tricky here is we have our midground, which we wanted to keep a lighter value than our foreground, but even our foreground has depth. This is not a two-dimensional place. This is a field with a path that goes, right? And we're doing a couple of things to communicate that depth and space. One is we're thinning the path out as it goes into that space to communicate that as things get farther away from us, they get thinner or smaller, right? The second thing is even within our field, we need to have a value range where the part right here, right in this very front part of our path, that is going to be our darkest value, our biggest amount of contrast, okay? And then as you can see here in our reference photo, as that field continues and wraps around that path, it lightens in value. And that's how we can communicate. This also has extreme depth and space. If you want it to feel very, very flat, you can do this all in one value, but I will say that that is going to mess with our illusion of the path. So you need to have both of those things working together to pull off this feel of hillside with this path going into it. Okay. So I have my 12. Let's mix a stronger green. So I need more yellow. Also, should we just see what happens if we were to mix sepia with Azure blue?
Yes.
Let's just see. Sometimes I'm like, I don't know. Why not? Okay, we got Azure blue. Oh.
Hello.
Hello there. You are a lovely color. And sometimes just having a scratch paper handy. Wow. That is a gorgeous green. Do you see that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Well, I love that, and I'm going to use that. And then let's see what happens if we take that same green and let's add a little bit of yellow to it. Oh my gosh, such lovely greens. These would be beautiful with like roses. And I'm thinking of like green leaves, like that's
Wait,
good.
You like painting flowers?
I do like painting flowers.
Not you.
Okay.
I
So
love your shirt, by the way. Mushroom shirt.
thank you very much.
It's a great shirt.
I thought it was perfect for this.
You're a fun guy.
You're a fun guy. Okay, I'm taking this dark green. I'm going to start by putting in the grass along the bottom because that's going to be my darkest value. Okay, and then kind of I'm going to rinse my brush, hit it off the side of the cup so it's not drippy, and then I'm going to keep going with horizontal brush strokes. Around this time is where I'm going to grab that green where I mixed a little bit more yellow into it. And now I want to use just water. Okay, and let's actually I'm going to do a little bit more warmth. Just a hint more warmth. So I want you to add little bits of yellow in here because if you were to look at like a large grassy field, it's not all one color green. There's actually sections of grass that's maybe it's like not grass or weeds or fake grass or maybe hints of plants that haven't bloomed yet. Like there's so much variation. So if you were to just go in there and drop in some color here and there, that would be true to what we would see in nature, okay? And I'm going to do the same thing on this side here. So I'm taking this beautiful dark green that I mixed with my sepia and my azure blue. Now I'm going to add water, hit it off the side of the cup, and then my brush strokes aren't going to be as horizontal. They're going to kind of follow the line of the mountain. And the reason for that is I'm trying to communicate that there's like, this is kind of like a hillside, right?
Right.
So it's got to swoop up. Gosh, isn't that pretty?
Yeah.
I just really love that color. Now I'm going to go and just add little hints of different greens. Now keep this in mind. The foreground, these little chunks of color, and we'll do this with the grass later on, are going to be thicker. And then as you kind of work your way back into the space, those thicker sections, they kind of thin out. And it's just hints.
I don't know if all you viewers have been to Missouri, but it's very flat here.
Yeah.
And we moved here from Northern California, and me specifically kind of from the foothills, and I miss mountains big time.
Yeah, they're lovely.
We lived in Salt Lake for a bit too, and that's a gorgeous area for mountains.
And at this point, if you guys have any salt, if you wanted to put some salt texture in here, you can. I did a little bit in my reference photo. You can see that salt texture right here. I decided not to do it on this one. I just really love the colors that I'm getting here, so I'm just going to leave it. Okay, now we need to put in our path. So we have sepia, but like I said, this sepia runs really like pink red. So I want to kind of neutralize that a little bit. So I'm going to take this sepia and I can actually mix it with some of the green that I already have on my palette, like so. You can also add black to it. That will neutralize the color and gray it down. Okay, now I'm going to use my 6 for this, and I'm going to use horizontal brush strokes working back and forth that get like smaller lengthwise, but get closer together as I go up. Okay, so let's start out just rough. I like to put it in. Then I'm going to add water to my brush to make the paint move a little bit more. Okay. And then I want to make sure the brown reaches the grass. So I'm going to make sure those colors are overlapped.
In photography, this effect is called focal compression.
What effect is that?
Like, as things get further away, the more squished together they seem.
Yes.
You achieve that with a long distance lens, like something above 90 millimeters up into 200 millimeters.
Cool.
The effect gets exaggerated, but you can. Have you seen pictures of like a giant moon that's way too big that you've never seen?
Yes.
People do that with focal length tricks like compression.
Really? Is that how they do it?
Uh huh.
I've always been like, why is that moon so big?
No, they just stand like miles away with a huge lens.
Yeah.
And take a picture of a mountain and it compresses the moon.
Because my art teacher taught me, and I don't know if this is true, but anytime we see a moon, even though it may look big, if you were to hold your arm out and put a quarter to it, the moon is never larger than a quarter in the sky. And so when I would see these photographs, I'd be like, Photoshop.
I took astronomy a couple times in college.
Uh-huh.
And we talked about a very similar thing because sometimes you see the moon when it's close to the ground with your eyes, and it seems so big.
It seems huge. You guys know.
It's the same size. It's just that you have a point of reference. When it's up in the sky, you don't have anything to compare it to. It's the same size moon. If you were to take like a ruler per se and do it at arm's length, and it would be, let's call it 3/4 of an inch. The next night, when it's down by the horizon, it's still 3/4 of an inch. You just have perspective of something to put it next to.
That is so insane. That is amazing. And I feel like that illustrates so much of what we're trying to do even in art, where everything is literally, what's the word I'm looking for? Like
a trick of your eyes.
A trick of your eye.
Yeah.
Like, that is so crazy. It's amazing that the moon can feel like it changes bigness depending on what is around it.
This seems so silly. If you don't have a ruler or something, next time you see a big moon, turn around and bend over and look through your legs.
Yes, I've done this.
And because the perspective of the ground and the moon changes, your brain lets go of that, and the moon looks small again, even if it's on the horizon.
That is so, I love the world so much. That is so amazing. Okay, we put in our path. I did a little bit of a dry brush texture on it. You can do as much or as little of that as you want. Just remember that the strokes are bigger in the foreground, and as they work their way around that path and it starts to compress, is that the word that you used? Mm-hmm. They get a little bit smaller together. Now what I'm going to do is like kind of try and connect the ground to the grass. So I need to go along this grassy edge and kind of put a darker green there. And what this does is this shows that it kind of like grass, side, path, side, grass. It separates it a little bit. And it doesn't have to be like this perfect outline, right? We don't want an outline. So I like to put a little bit of color down, wipe my brush off, and then just kind of smear it a little bit. You can even smear it into the pathway and not just the field. And then as it works its way back, we have to remember that line is going to get thinner and lighter in value. It has to match the values around it. Just like that.
I want to put the people typing right now at ease about atmospheric distortions and those do exist. And when the moon is right on the cusp of the horizon, there can be distortions. And you see that with the sun as well.
Okay.
I'm talking about like when it's just like close, like when you see it around the trees.
Yes.
That's what I'm talking about.
Okay, good to know.
Also, it's made out of cheese. I have our 7-year-old going that
it's made
of cheese.
Yeah, her name's Luna, so she really loves the moon, and we have little things with her about it. Okay, so now I'm going to switch to my round 2 and I'm going to start putting in some grass textures, and we're going to follow that same rule that we're following the whole time. Grass in the foreground right along here is going to be bigger. As it works its way back into this field, it's going to get thinner and smaller and lighter in value because it needs to match the values around it. Okay, so you can go as dark as you want for this foreground. Try not to have it be like black though. We still want it to feel green. And I'm just kind of doing these swoops, just a little here and there. Okay. And then
That adds so much.
doesn't it?
Yes.
Just a little texture. And then in the middle, same thing. And that might be a little bit too dark of a value. So I'm going to add some water to it and see what that does. Okay, that feels better. Let's add more water and go about here. And notice that I'm just now doing basically lines. We kind of lost our and we're kind of just doing little thin hints of, yes, there is grass here, but it's so far away that you're really only seeing the hint of it. Okay? And you can do more or less if you want wildflowers and you have bleed-proof white. Just doing some bleed-proof white in this will just be lovely. So lovely. Okay, now what we're going to do is we are going to do step 4, which is the trees. Now, I want to call attention to a couple of things here. I did the trees in different values because I wanted it to feel full, like there's a forest of trees happening over here, and I wanted to create depth. If you want it to feel kind of like almost like just a wall of trees, like it's just lining the edge, then you would just do it in one value, okay? The other reason why I wanted to add trees in here is because I feel like it will break up this space a little bit and make it even more clear. This is a section, here's a section, here's a section, okay?
Do you ever, like at carnivals or some public space, see those caricature artists?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know for you, but for me, when I see them, I just go like, holy cow.
I know.
It's just the gestural nature of it, and they can like capture people's whatevers, and you're amazed, right?
Yes.
I have that same vibe, and I've watched you paint a million times. When you do trees, and I know you paint flowers and landscapes and stuff, but like, you just so naturally whip out a tree, and it just always looks so good. Your trees are my caricature artist.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, thank you, my dear. And okay, I'll talk you through how I do trees. You have to not care about them. Trees are one of those things that are going to trip you up because you're just like, it's a tree and it's got to be. No, this is what you do. You do a thin line for the trunk. Then you take your, I'm using a round 2, and I do dashes along the bottom. And I just kind of follow the trunk up. The dashes along the bottom are going to be the widest. And then as I work my way up the trunk, they get smaller and thinner. And you can make your tree full by just like keep layering these things on top of each other. Or you can go for a tree that's a little bit more like, I don't want to say naked, but sparse. Where I just do, okay, here's one, here's some little dashes, and then as we get to the bottom, they get bigger. This tree exists in nature, this tree exists in nature, so many other trees exist in nature, and I actually like to do a combination because that's also true. We would see variation in size and width and color and length and all of that kind of stuff. So these values that I'm using are a lighter value. And you can make this feel as full as you want. You can do as many layers as you want. Now, if you guys were able to snag a National Parks box, and that sold out very quickly, and I just want to acknowledge that we are trying to see if we can rebuild. Sourcing is actually really tricky. But anyways, if you do have that, I taught you guys how to make a foliage brush, which is basically you cut up a brush to create different textures with it for things like creating trees and stuff like that. So if you have that brush, this is a good project to use it on. So I decided to leave a gap in my trees in this area. Um, but this tree line, I included it on the outline. However, this is your painting. You can literally do whatever you want. So if you're just like, oh, I want to continue it, or I actually only want it on this side, do it. So I just want you guys to notice that I'm making really ugly marks. They're inconsistent. They're layered on top of each other. They're a little bit wild, but we get a tree. And it's basically just keeping within this triangle shape. And let's do one that's maybe a little bit more sparse. You also kind of want to pay attention to, it's easy for our brain to make trees all the same height. Try and play with that. Try and mess it up. Now, another reason why I like doing layers of trees is because it gives me an opportunity to hide things I don't like. So if you're doing these like mid value, light value greens, and there's just a tree that went crooked or is wonky and you just don't like it, when you do your dark value trees on top, like just cover that area with a dark value tree. And then try not to mess up on that one. That's the only thing.
You always have the reset button. Can you reset button trees? Could you blend those out, or do you think they're too strong?
It's not that they're too strong. The problem is the background is too light because
Gotcha.
we want to keep this like a pretty smooth transition. If you were to blend them out, what that would do is you would need to like blend out this whole section. And as long as you blended out this whole triangle here, it could be fine. You would let it dry and layer on top, but then you would just have to check your values of what's around it because blending it out would change the values of this hill. Okay.
So don't mess them up.
Just try not to, but also the beauty of doing a lot is like if you mess up one tree, odds are people cannot tell. There's just too many trees to look at.
Ain't nobody got time for that.
And nobody got time to look at each individual tree. Our mistakes are so apparent to us because one, we made them and we noticed them. And two, we're like in our painting. Like people usually don't get that close to our artwork.
I know this is a long stretch, but if I ever had a comedy sketch show, I sometimes, when I'm bored, daydream characters for it.
Yeah.
And I thought of one called the Art Friend.
Yeah.
Who was like awful about your art. Like just is in your house and knows to tip to all your paintings like, oh, you chose that, huh? Oh.
Did you draw that yourself?
Oh, you didn't erase this outline?
Oh, you followed a tutorial?
Oh. I just think that'd be so funny.
That would be hilarious because everybody kind of has that friend.
The art friend?
The art friend.
Oh.
And now I'm going to do my trees in a darker value on top wherever it's dry. If you need to use your heated craft tool to make sure it's nice and dry, go for it. I actually remember this was before I was heavy into painting and I was still in college. And Michael's mom, Michael is my husband, by the way, and his mom is a big crafter. We would spend our time making like invitations for parties and like really fun stuff. And one time she had some friends over and we like were so excited to show them some like really cute invitations we made for my sister's baby shower. And we like we're like, look at this. And it was like so cute. And this lady who I've like literally never talked to before in my life was like, yeah, that's cute, but like, what's the point of it? And I was like, do you not find joy in life? Like, what do you mean? What's the point of it? The point is that it's fun. I was just like so taken aback that she would say that. And I just said, I just really enjoy it. That's the point of it, lady.
Listen, I don't want to get too philanthropic, but I think some people do enjoy other people's misery. You know what I mean? They just like being a black cloud.
Well, after now, like looking back on it and having a little bit more perspective and being a little bit older, I understand too that so much of those kinds of comments are from people who are not comfortable with their own passions and are choosing not to follow them. And so then they kind of project. They don't allow themselves to really follow their loves. And so when they see other people doing it, they're like, yeah, but it's such a waste of time, which is sad because you know that that's their own self-talk.
Yeah.
That's what they say to themselves. And so, like before, I was like, how dare you? And now looking back, I'm like, I'm really sorry. I wish that you took the time to do things that you liked so then you wouldn't poo poo on mine.
I happen to know who you're talking about, and I'm just giggling inside.
Okay, so I'm still going on with my trees, just in a darker value. And again, you can do as many or as little trees as you want. And if trees are not your friend, if you're just like, listen, Sarah, I have tried your trees. I can't do it. It's not my thing. That's okay. There are some, like, I can't paint cats. You know what I mean? Like, everybody has something that they struggle with. Leave them out.
I like that your mountain slopes are aligned on your two pictures. Looks like one big tall hill.
I just noticed. I'm like, what are you talking about? It does look like that. So I messed up my tree trunk here. I just want to tell you guys a trick. It kind of went crooked and then I straightened it and now it's like kind of wonky. Whenever I do that, I just thicken it. So now it's like this big guy. And so then you're just like, wait, where is the center? And you're like, I don't know. It got really big.
This reminds me of where I go camping with my friend Eric, like in the Sierra Nevadas. And let me tell you, the amount of trees that grow straight is like very few.
Yes.
They're all wonky.
I know. That's the tricky thing is like, I've noticed that too when I'm looking at places that I want to recreate. I'm like, all of those trees are super wonky. But what is hard for us as artists is the lines in our painting really inform our composition.
Yeah.
And so if we're going for kind of more of these straight things and all of a sudden one is like this, then our eye will immediately go to that because that's a diagonal line when we're used to them all being straight. So that's just something that we have to think about. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't paint wonky trees or crooked trees. It just means that you have to be aware of their effect within your composition. And sometimes they lend itself to the composition and sometimes it will distract. And you as an artist have to decide, is this lending, is this helping, or is this hurting?
The last time we went, I just started taking pictures of all the wonky trees. There are some that like had fallen over and then decided to grow straight up. So they're like shaped like a capital L.
Really?
Yeah, there are ones that like a tree is growing out of a tree. Like a different species of tree is just like growing out of the base of another tree. They're weird.
That is so cool. I love really like curly, willowy, like thick, spiral, gnarled trees.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a hint for a project coming up for October.
I'm starting to get fond of trees. I don't know if you guys know. I'm coming around.
If you guys saw the sequoia tutorial that we did for the National Parks box, you would know that Michael is a big fan of trees.
I think they're the best.
And can talk about them with all of this fabulous information. Okay.
That's a good one.
You like that one?
Oh, yeah.
I was afraid it was too dark, but...
Uh-uh.
Okay, I'm just going to do a couple more and then we're like just about done.
I like feel like I can smell this picture.
What does it smell like?
Just like dew and that just mountainy dew smell. I don't know how to describe it.
Mountain Dew?
It's like a Mountain Dew. It's like a Dr. Pepper. No, it has a smell. I don't know. It's parts, I guess, pine sap or conifer sap in general.
I understand what you're saying. Just like our misty treetops, that one I felt like I could hear the birds when I looked at this one. This one I feel like I could smell the smell.
And like the outside of your tent is wet.
Yep.
And you're wet if you forgot your rain fly. Hopefully you didn't.
I don't know what a rain fly is. I'm assuming it goes over your tent to make sure.
Roof tent. Tent roof.
Tent roof. I will always laugh about. Okay, we're just doing trees here, so I have time to tell you guys a story. Michael and I have a lot of property, and we decided to go camping with our kids in it last summer. It was so fun. Um, and we have 3 kids, and one of them is really little. He was 2 at the time when we decided to do this. And we had this blow up air mattress for me and Michael to stay in. The girls have sleeping bags. And the kids were jumping on the air mattress before we went to go sleep in it, which made it pop. But we wanted to stay out there. So the whole night, Michael and I are on this air mattress that is slowly letting out air. And then my 2-year-old climbs into bed with us because he didn't want to stay in his pack and play. So I'm trying to get this 2-year-old to go to sleep, and the mattress is literally doing this around me, and I'm like trying to sleep on the cold, hard crap. And so whenever I think of like tents and camping, I just think of that, like trying to sleep in that. And it's so funny because we could have walked to our house. We were in our backyard. But we're like, no, we really want to do this. And then we woke up and I'm like,
never again.
Well, I'm tired. Let's go home. Just funny. And while during the time it was miserable, it's a great story. It's a great memory that I'll always think about. Okay.
I don't want to point fingers, but I think Luna popped it.
Oh, Luna for sure popped it.
She's our wild child. She's our middle girl, the one who thinks the moon is made of cheese, everybody.
Mm-hmm.
She's, I tell people she's like a forest spirit trapped in a human. She's just wild.
She is wild. I have a poster in her room that says, I'll keep you safe if you keep me wild, because she just reminds me that I have no control over her.
Please listen to me, because if you don't, I don't know what to do.
I cannot make her do anything she doesn't.
Yeah, our eldest kid is like, I don't know how else to describe it, except like straight-laced. She's very interested in people's feelings. She's like articulate and on time and organized. Luna is like, never wears pants, outside, catching whatever
doing
bugs.
Gymnastics off the furniture regularly.
Cartwheels downstairs.
Legit. Okay. Now, I just want to say with these trees, these taller ones, usually you want your tree to start, like the top, to be above or below a landscape line. Does that make sense?
Yes.
You never want it to be totally even with it because it will automatically make it do this.
Gotcha.
Okay? And I think I'm just going to do one more little tree and do my birds, and then I think we're good. Luna is the one that keeps on forgetting Coda's name, which is Keenan's new little baby, Keenan and Nicole's, and she's called him Taquito and Cobra
and Dakota.
That
was kind of close.
That one I could see Dakota.
Taquito's the funniest.
And the best part is when she's like, when are we going to be able to go see Taquito? I'm like, what are you talking about? She's like, Taquito, I want to go see Taquito. And Ella just leans over to me. She's like, she means Coda. I'm like, how do you know that? Like, how can you?
We've talked a lot. I don't know if Luna is serious or a comedic genius. I think she's just deadpan. She might just be hilarious.
She is hilarious. She's a funny girl. Okay. Now we're on the very last step, which is if you want to add little birds, go ahead and put the birds in. So I'm going to grab black. I'm going to use my round 2. And I have them here on the outline. And I'm just going to put them in. Now remember, they got to be really tiny, almost like just slight dashes, because they're small. Birds are small. Ooh, that got a little too thick. Let's see if I can lighten it up.
That one's an eagle.
That's a predator. I'm going to make it wet with just water and then a clean paper towel to lift. And it's not going to erase it, but it will lighten it. And then blend. Huh.
Your monster voice is so rare, but so pure. I love when you do that. Do it one more time.
Dang it. Hold on. I keep making this. There we go. No, I can't do it now. I'm nervous.
It's a bird.
It's a predator.
So good.
Okay. And you can make these birds go up into the sky, maybe more within the trees as if they're kind of flying out from that little burst of trees over here. Seriously, whatever you want. Or if you don't even like the birds and you're like, these don't even look like birds, well, don't put them in. Okay. And then if you want to put just very last, like little outcroppings of maybe some dirt or grass on your path, especially in the foreground, go for it. This gives it a little bit of texture. And there is our Calling Mountain project, and I really was excited. I had to do a few tries to get this project right, but what I really wanted is I wanted it to feel like an invitation. I wanted you to look at this painting and have it feel like it's beckoning, like come and walk my path and come and explore what's around me and come and experience this. And I really hope that by painting this and having fun with the different layers and all this stuff, you can see how sometimes pathways and we can use lines and composition to have a feeling. And this, because we included a pathway in there, I think it is that kind of invitation welcoming, where if you were to take that out and just have tree lines, it would still be beautiful, but it would feel a little bit more static, almost like you can only see this. And with this painting, I really wanted it to be an invitation to come and explore. So notice things like that when you're painting projects. Notice how they make you feel. And whenever you notice things like this, that is just adding to your arsenal. So that when you go paint your own stuff, you can recall all of those things and utilize those feelings and what you're trying to communicate in your artwork. So thank you so much for painting with me. This was a blast. I hope you enjoyed it. Michael, always a pleasure.
Well, thank you.
We'll see you guys next time. Bye.